Well, hunting season is upon us, and we've got all kinds of seasons to talk about. Joining us today, she's a wildlife communications specialist with the Ohio Division of Wildlife, Sarah Schott. And thanks for coming today.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
I know we're going to talk about all kinds of seasons because people mainly, at least I do, I mainly think of deer season and that's it. But there's so much more in Ohio, right? And some of those seasons are getting ready to start right away.
Yes, definitely. So deer season does open up always the last Saturday in September. That's our archery season. It'll run through February. But before that, we have this Sunday, September 1st, opens up squirrel season and also dove season. So this is often in the hunting community. Some people get really excited. It's the kickoff to hunting season, so to speak. It's the first of several ones that will start to come.
Right.
And then on September 7th, so in 2 Saturdays, we will have early goose season and teal season as well.
All right, teal, what is that?
Yes, so teal is our smallest duck that we have here in Ohio.
Okay.
We have mainly 2 different kinds. We have a green-winged teal and a blue-winged teal. And they are one of our earlier migrants, so they migrate early before all the other duck species. So they have that special season in September because they're passing through earlier. The other duck seasons will come in later in October.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask then. So you have a season for a certain kind. I mean, you just can't go shoot any duck at that time. It's the teal.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
For teal season, it's only teal.
All right, all right. And then you mentioned deer archery, which is different than the other hunting season that'll come later. When's archery start?
Correct. So archery starts that last Saturday in September. We also have other firearm opportunities that will come in. We have an early firearm season in October in certain areas, and then we have other ones coming in youth season in November, and then our big week-long gun season is in December.
So how many hunters are we talking about that are excited to like go out Sunday and start getting some? When we have dove and squirrel at the time.
So over the next several months throughout the fall and the winter, we expect about 500,000 people to take to the field, the forest, the water, the lakes, the rivers, in pursuit of a variety of different species.
Okay, so like I know many times before I've thought, why do we have hunting season? Why do we need to do this? But there are reasons, right? It's for conservation. So
yes.
Explain that.
Yes. So it's a complicated subject. It's hard to understand, and most people have that form of thought, right?
Yeah, I'm like, don't kill the squirrels.
Yes, exactly. But hunters are actually extremely important to conservation. If we didn't have hunters, our wildlife and our wildlife habitat today would look very different. And one of the main components that they do for hunting is that they are an extreme source of funding for conservation. They're a major financial component. And we can actually take a look at, in 2023, the Division of Wildlife, our state agency here in Ohio that regulates our hunting and fishing laws. We kind of have a pie chart of where our revenue came from in 2023 and divided up into quarters here. Our first quarter, not about hunting, but also very important, is the sale of our fishing license. About a quarter of our funding comes from fishermen who also, a lot of people who fish also hunt as well.
Okay.
And then we also have another quarter, roughly a quarter, comes from the sale of hunting licenses as well as deer permits. So deer hunting, like you mentioned, is the most popular form of hunting here in Ohio. But about a quarter of our funding comes from that deer hunting, the hunting license and the sale of deer permits.
Wow.
And then we also have kind of a miscellaneous hodgepodge of things. That is also the sale of turkey permits, our wetlands habitat stamp, some variety of other things makes up that quarter. And then our last one up here is also very important. It's our biggest source of funding here in Ohio, and it's the Wildlife and Sport Fish Conservation Fund. And that fund is funded solely by hunters and anglers.
Okay, so if people want to start like with the squirrels and the dove, is that a special license or do you just get a hunting license now and then a deer hunting license later then?
Yes, so the squirrel and the dove, that is just a hunting license.
Okay.
If you're pursuing deer, you have to have a deer permit. And if you're pursuing waterfowl, so those teal, those geese that we talked about, you have to have a couple more extra things. You have to have a state wetland stamp and a federal wetland stamp as well.
Okay, all right. So let's talk more about the wildlife and sport fish restoration. I mean, what does that mean? What's happening in Ohio?
Yes, so the Wildlife and Sport Fish Restoration Fund comes from 2 acts, and the first one is called the Pittman-Robertson Act, and that was passed in 1939, and it is an extra tax on hunting equipment. So what I like to tell people is this is one of the first and only times that people actually kind of self-imposed a tax. The hunters actually went to the government and they said, we want this extra tax to fund conservation. So that extra tax since 1939 has raised almost $17 billion for conservation across the United States. And then the other component of that is the fishing side. So the hunting side, the Pittman-Robertson Act works so well that a couple decades later in the 1950s, we passed a Dingell-Johnson Act, which did the same thing, but on fishing equipment.
All right. And so there's an economic impact then to this whole thing. I mean, people come in hunting, they get the licenses, so it's just kind of a good thing for our area, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. All of this different sort of funding that is coming into conservation is certainly important, but hunters are also contributing towards our economy as a whole. The Division of Wildlife did a study and looked at 2022, and we found that hunters alone contributed almost $2 billion to Ohio's economy.
All right. Okay, so I've never tried this before. You know, I was saying, who's going to hunt squirrel and who's going to hunt goose? But you're like, your family does, right? And you make stuff with it. So I'm going to explain what we've got here, and I'm going to try it.
Yes, sure. So the first one that you just picked up is a honey barbecue snack stick that is made of goose. There's also pork fat incorporated into it, but the main protein there is goose. As you mentioned, my family, we are wild game hunters, so our main source of protein comes from wild game. So this is stuff that we see on our dinner table every night.
Do a lot of hunters eat what they...
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Especially for waterfowl, it is a law that if you harvest that, you have to consume it. So it can't go to waste. It's called a wanton waste law.
Oh, that makes
so
sense.
In particular for this goose, very important. That second one that you just tried is a Cajun goose sausage. So that has the opposite, other than the first one was a little bit more sweet. That one should be a little more spicy, but that one's very great with crackers and cheese.
I just need some cheese and crackers.
Yeah.
Well, Sarah, a lot of great information. Thanks for coming today.
Yeah, thank you.
This is very tasty. All right, don't go away. We'll look at the weather forecast next.